Some stories reveal clues in the most unlikely places. A diary hidden under the mattress, scrawled with words that blend childhood and brutality. A drawing made in the back of the classroom, which only makes sense after tragedy strikes. Other times, revelations emerge in the final moment, in those phrases that seem thrown to the wind, but which carry codes and buried memories. It is there that the hidden truth insinuates itself, not to ease the conscience, but to stake its claim in the listener's imagination. The most disturbing thing is that these last words aren't always meant to be confessions. Some sound like provocation. Others like a game whose rules are clear to only them. In one case, the convicted woman looked directly at the prosecutor and said, "You don't know everything." Then she closed her eyes as if content to let that doubt burn into his mind forever. This kind of revelation doesn't end with the execution. It spreads. It inspires theories, fuels rumors, and changes the way investigators reconstruct the events. The execution closes the body but not the mystery. And perhaps that's exactly what these children wanted. To become a mystery that no one could fully solve. If you stop and think about it, this is also a form of control. A power that, even at the last moment, remains in their hands. And this idea that someone so young can understand and manipulate this psychological impact is perhaps more frightening than the crime itself. It's the final transformation, the moment they stop being seen as victims of circumstance and become conscious authors of their own narrative. But it's not just about them. It's about us. About how we react to these stories, about how we seek justifications for what seems impossible. Some try to frame them as diagnoses. Others prefer to believe in family tragedies or external influences. But there's a void that no theory fills, that exact moment when the decision is made. A mental click that no one sees, but that changes everything. It's in this void that human curiosity is lost. We want to find the beginning, the first moment, the first sign. We want to know if it could have been prevented. But what if the answer is no? What if, even with all the warnings, it still happened? This question is what keeps these cases alive for decades. And every detail that emerges behind the scenes, a statement from a retired police officer, a letter forgotten in an archive, a conversation accidentally recorded, adds more shadows to the picture. It never clears the air. It never resolves the issue. It only reinforces that when we speak coldly about crimes committed by children, we're not just dealing with facts. We're dealing with something that shakes the very essence of what we understand about humanity. Perhaps that's why, upon hearing his last words, we feel something strange. It's not just horror. It's a kind of morbid fascination, as if we're standing before a half-open door to a place we shouldn't enter, but from which we can't look away. And that door, once you see it, it doesn't go away. No tears. No tremor in her voice. Just that smile, a thin line on her face, more like silent irony than any expected human reaction. The courtroom was packed, and the moment the judge read the sentence, the air seemed thicker, as if everyone knew they were witnessing something that would never happen again. Behind the scenes, the police officers who accompanied her swear she seemed too calm, as if she had already anticipated every step of that day. And then came the detail no one forgot. Before hearing the sentence, he asked for a glass of milk. The scene is so disconcerting that even years later, investigators describe it hesitantly. The glass was handed to her. She held it with both hands, drank slowly, and when she finished, pulled out a paper napkin. She wrote something quickly, then dubbed it. No one knows exactly what was there. The napkin has disappeared from official evidence, but rumors suggest it contained a single name, followed by a strange symbol. What we know is that this seemingly banal gesture completely changed the perception of the case. Because it wasn't just a casual request. It was a message, a note, and perhaps, a clue to a hidden truth that had never been made public. Imagine the impact of this information on those who followed closely. A teenager convicted of murder, smiling in court, and leaving one last enigma before even serving her sentence. Behind the scenes, it said the prosecutor tried to suppress the content, fearing that the revelation could reopen investigations or even link the crime to something larger. This possibility was never confirmed, but there are reports that, weeks later, one of the officers involved requested a transfer to another city, without offering any explanation. His behavior changed. He became more reserved, avoided discussing the matter, and when pressed, would only utter one sentence. She knew more than she was saying. And that's precisely what makes this story so disturbing. Because it's not just the act of killing but the mentality behind it. The ability to transform a moment that should be one of desperation into a game of control. To reverse the role and make everyone, even those judging, feel watched. It's as if she'd turned the lens, putting the entire courtroom in the dock, rather than the other way around. This role reversal is one of the most disturbing elements in cases like this. It dismantles the idea of victim and perpetrator, scrambles logic, and leaves open the question no one wants to answer. Did this coldness emerge suddenly, or was it gradually built, fueled by something or someone behind the scenes in her life? And if so, to what extent was it conscious? The smile in court, the milk, the napkin. 3 elements that, in isolation, mean nothing. But together, they form a scene impossible to ignore. A scene that shows a teenager taking control of the narrative until the very last second. And perhaps that's the scariest part. It didn't seem like she was reacting to events, but rather that she had already decided exactly how she wanted everything to end, and how she wanted to be remembered. The curious thing is that after the trial, some reporters tried to draw a deeper profile of her. They spoke to neighbors, teachers, even childhood friends. They all described the same thing. A seemingly ordinary girl, sometimes shy, sometimes outgoing, but without any behavior that would suggest something so extreme. This is the contradiction that creates the morbid fascination, when the surface and the depth tell completely different stories. One teacher, however, broke this pattern. He said that a year before the crime, she had written an essay on life-changing decisions. In the text, she described in detail a character who made an irreversible decision and yet felt proud of it. It was fiction, but with a precision of feelings that caught attention. The essay was kept but never included in the court records. From this point on, it's impossible not to think about the construction of a mindset. Because coldness doesn't appear out of nowhere. It's like a slowly constructed structure, with pieces that fit together over time. Small choices, small perceptions, small decisions. Until the moment when everything becomes too solid to be dismantled. And when that happens, there's no going back. What's most frightening is that even during the execution, she maintained her composure. No apology, no hesitation. She simply looked at the audience as if registering the faces of everyone watching her, and blurted out something few heard, "You don't know the half of it." Words that, to some, sound like a confession to another crime. To others, merely provocation. But, in any case, enough to reignite theories and discussions that remain alive to this day. Every time this case is revisited, the feeling is that a crucial piece is missing. Something that was right in front of everyone but went unnoticed. As if the true impact of what happened was hidden in details that only make sense when pieced together. And it is precisely in this search for meaning that the story continues to grow, spreading through reports, informal investigations, and even online forums, where each clue is analyzed as if it were the final key. The ironic thing is that perhaps this was precisely her intention, not to close the matter but to keep it alive. To create an enigma that could not be solved, keeping her name linked to something greater than the crime itself. And at this point, it's impossible not to admit that she succeeded. Because even years later we're still here trying to understand not only what she did, but why she wanted us to know it that way. And it's strange, because as these pieces fall into place in your mind, I know you already feel like something is still missing. And it will be missing. It will always be missing. It's precisely this emptiness that keeps the story alive, and it's into this emptiness that I'll take you deeper whenever you come back here. But for this to continue, I need you. It's your inscription that sustains this space. It's what keeps the light burning that illuminates these hidden truths, that allows me to open every locked drawer and reveal what almost no one dares to look at. When you subscribe, it's not just a click. It's like walking through a door and saying, I want to know more. I want to see what they're hiding. And believe me, there's still a lot hidden. Stories that never made it into the newspapers. Names no one dares to pronounce. Details that only survive here. So, stay. Subscribe. Because in the next step, we'll go where this girl never wanted anyone to go, and maybe you'll find out that her smile wasn't the most disturbing detail of that afternoon. He didn't write like a condemned man. He wrote like a scriptwriter of his own death. Each line carried the weight of a cold, calculated decision. There was no regret. There was no escape. Only the precision of someone who understands that a final impression can be more powerful than an entire life. Behind the scenes, the agents who handled the letter spoke of something strange. The smell. A sweet scent, unusual for official paper, as if he wanted the memory to be felt before it was read. And it was in this almost invisible detail that many believed the hidden truth about what he really wanted to say lay. The chosen song? An old song, banned from some radio broadcasts due to its dark connotations. He requested that it be played at a low volume, only audible to those close enough to feel the vibration in the air, like a whisper that refuses to die. This choice said more about his mindset than any formal confession. He didn't just want to leave, he wanted to transform his own death into an experience that would contaminate those present. Stay with me until the end. Because there's a reason this missing page has never been recovered, and it's not just bureaucratic. Some swear that what was written on it couldn't be archived without directly impacting the lives of certain people still alive. And that detail changes everything. Imagine reading the last page of someone's life and realizing it's about you. That every sentence was designed to leave an echo in your mind, to pierce you like a splinter you can't pull out. That was his weapon, not the blade, not the bullet, but permanence. He wanted to be present even after he'd been erased from the records. Rumor has it that, before being intercepted, the letter passed through other hands, people who should never have had access to it. And that, afterward, important decisions were made in silence, in meetings without minutes, as if each word had the power to rewrite not only his memory, but the role of those around him. And just when you think this story has revealed everything, you realize the real heart isn't the crime, nor the execution. It's the invisible game that unfolds when an uncomfortable truth threatens to escape. What else did that letter say? Who actually read it? And what was done to make that page disappear without a trace? Some agents say they saw the content. Others deny seeing anything out of the ordinary. But all of them, without exception, changed the way they spoke about him after that day. It's as if the boy had anticipated every reaction, as if he had programmed the transformation of his own image after death. And this transformation wasn't spontaneous, it was planned. The last time someone mentioned the letter in public, the conversation was cut off mid-sentence. Sudden silence, exchanged glances, a change of subject. An almost rehearsed choreography to protect something no one acknowledges exists. It's in this space between what's known and what's kept quiet that danger lurks, and it's precisely there that his story still breathes, waiting for the next opening to infiltrate. What was on that map no one could explain clearly. It wasn't ordinary geography. It wasn't streets nor neighborhoods. The lines looked more like veins than paths, intersecting at impossible angles, as if they wanted to represent a body and a city at the same time. Some said it was just delirium, the effect of sleepless nights and days locked away. Others swear there was logic, like a code that only worked between them. The pact wasn't born on the day of the crime. It began long before, in silences and glances that dispensed with words. Behind the scenes, guards commented that when one spoke, the other listened as if receiving an order they already knew by heart. There was no hesitation. Just absolute complicity. Their mentality wasn't shaped by chance. It was built like a secret safe house, accessible only to them. During interrogations, they avoided direct questions about the phrase uttered at the execution. "See you on the other side" seemed more than a promise. Perhaps it was a decision already made, a point marked on a map that no one could decipher. The hidden truth is that even physically separated, they acted as if they knew exactly what the other was thinking. A bond that, to outsiders, bordered on the supernatural. There were also small symbols scattered throughout the cell. Marks scratched into the wood of the bed, in the corner of the floor, and even behind a cracked mirror. Details that, at first glance, seemed like unimportant scribbles. But, lined up in the right order, they formed a sequence. Those who had access to the drawing said that, joined together, they indicated a point outside the prison perimeter. Something that shouldn't have been possible, considering they had no contact with the outside world. And then comes the most disturbing part. A few months later, an accident occurred exactly where the symbols indicated. There was no way they could have known about it beforehand. The coincidence, if it was a coincidence, impacted even the most skeptical. The case gained momentum in the corridors of the police station, spreading a silent unease. The question ceased to be why did they do that, and became what else did they know? A former employee years later revealed that the brothers had access to old newspaper clippings. Not recent news, nothing that could inform them about the present. But they were obsessed with certain headlines. Forgotten tragedies, unsolved disappearances, and in some notes their handwriting blended with future dates. A blend of past and future as if it were a single straight line. Those who analyzed the material believed it represented the transformation of a childhood pact into something much more complex. It wasn't just about protecting each other. It was about creating a plot where both would have defined roles until the end. The death of one wouldn't be the end, it would simply be the next phase of the plan. And this mindset meant their decisions didn't follow the logic of common survival. They were playing a different game. The strangest thing is that the brother who survived, at least for a few more days, never tried to escape, never cried, never begged. He seemed to just be waiting for the time to fulfill his part. As if the prison were just a narrow corridor leading to a place he already knew. One of the last revelations came from a guard who accompanied them as far as they could go. Before disappearing from view, he touched his pocket and smiled. No one ever knew what was inside. After that, rumors began to surface that the map and symbols weren't about a physical place, but about a mental path. A set of steps, words, and decisions that would only work if followed in the exact order. Something that couldn't be explained without experiencing it. And those who tried to reproduce the markings report feeling genuine discomfort, as if they were opening something they shouldn't. The detail many overlook is that these drawings were never made with ordinary paint or pencil. Analysis revealed traces of a strange, homemade pigment, which included blood mixed with something as yet unidentified. Perhaps that's why some call it a blood pact, not only for the crime but for what literally connected them. The impact of this discovery made even the most experienced researchers recoil. And now, looking back, it's impossible not to feel that the phrase spoken at the final moment was more than a goodbye. It was a confirmation. A password. A piece of a game that isn't over yet. Because as long as the map exists, even if kept in closed drawers, the path remains open. And whoever follows these lines may end up arriving at the very place where they believed they would meet again. The footsteps echoed slowly, rhythmically, as if someone were walking on ancient wood. There was no wood there. The floor was cold, cemented, and the sound made no sense. The officer swore the noise was coming from the cell, but when he looked, she remained seated, motionless, her eyes fixed on the wall, as if observing something that wasn't there. No movement of her lips. No tremor in her body. Just that slow, almost practiced breathing. Behind the scenes, other employees commented that she always seemed to know exactly when someone was watching her. Even without visible cameras, windows, or reflections. A simple raise of her eyebrow, and you had the feeling she'd already read what was on her mind. It was as if she carried a kind of mental map of people, anticipating their decisions before they even made them. A silent transformation that put her in control, even behind bars. The hidden truth that few acknowledged was that, throughout the entire process, she never defended herself. She didn't deny, she didn't cry, she didn't ask. Questions were ignored with a look that made the air heavier. Those who tried to force answers said they left the room feeling lost, as if they had left something behind. And this happened so often that some began to avoid direct contact, citing psychological safety reasons. The impact of this outside the prison was enormous. The press fueled theories, trying to fill the silence with fabricated or distorted stories. And, as in many cases, the lack of explanations generated more curiosity than any confession. People gathered in obscure forums, analyzing every gesture, every photograph, searching for revelations hidden in the details. Even the angle of the shadows in the images became a subject of speculation. One of the most disturbing accounts came from a retired investigator. He claimed that one night, while watching her through the small window in the door, he saw her expression suddenly change as if she'd received news. The problem was no one had come in, no one had spoken. And seconds later, a phone call interrupted his shift. Someone connected to the case had been found dead miles away. No signs of violence. No apparent cause. From then on, the staff's mindset changed. It was no longer just about maintaining physical security, but about controlling something they didn't understand. Decisions about schedules, visitation, and even lighting began to be revised, as if the prison wanted to protect itself from something invisible. And yet, even with all the control, strange reports persisted. Guards would hear low voices as they passed near the cell, but could never identify their origin. Some say she possessed a rare skill, absolute mastery of the unsaid. A form of communication that requires no words, yet still leaves profound marks. As if every silence were calculated to shape the perception of those around her. This control of the narrative, even without speaking, made her more feared than violent inmates. Because, unlike a gun, silence leaves no evidence. At one point, recorded only in internal notes, a psychiatrist attempted to break this barrier. He brought out personal objects, photographs, childhood memories, trying to provoke a reaction. No success. Until he placed a small wooden box on the table, of no apparent value. She then tilted her head slightly as if recognizing something, and for a few seconds she stared at the box. Then she returned to her neutral state. The box's contents were never revealed. In the following days, the prison routine grew more tense. People claimed to feel a presence when passing through her hallway, and even inmates unrelated to the case began to avoid the area. No one knew if it was fear or simple superstition. But gradually, it became clear that this had gone beyond the confines of a police case. It was something that touched the most primal part of human beings, the need to fill the void of what we don't understand. Some more attentive observers noticed that she rarely changed position. Her body always faced the same direction, as if waiting for a specific point in space. It was as if, behind that wall, there was something only she could see. A sort of invisible line connecting the cell to a distant place, perhaps even to a person. This constant posture fueled the feeling that all that silence wasn't inertia, but preparation. And it was in this atmosphere that a rumor began to gain traction, that the sound of the footsteps heard that first night had never faded. That, at certain moments in the early morning when everything is quieter, they can still be heard, ever closer, ever clearer. As if the hallway were being walked by someone not on the record. And strangely, always before these sounds emerge, she looks up. If you've made it this far, you already know. Stories like this don't end when the cell door closes. They linger in the mind, in the silence, in the unexplainable discomfort. And everyone who hears it carries a piece of it, even unintentionally. That's why I want you to write a single word below: witnessed. It doesn't matter if you saw it with your own eyes or just felt it from the way it was told. This word is more than a comment. It's a record, an invisible meeting point between those who understand the weight of this silence and those who have already realized that there are things that cannot be explained. That's how I know this story won't die here. Because when you leave this trail, you show me that it's worth continuing to bring what no one wants to tell, and what cannot be forgotten. The prosecutor looked away as if seeing something they'd rather forget. In the hallway, the click of a light bulb burning broke the silence, but no one moved. That question, simple, direct, charged with venom, hung in the air as if it still echoed off the walls of the execution room. Some say he wasn't referring to a physical body. That the first body was a code, a message to someone specific. Others swear that, behind the scenes of the investigation, there were entire pages of deleted statements, names crossed out in black ink. It's no coincidence that a retired investigator confessed years later that on the night of the arrest, there was a parallel, unrecorded operation conducted by men who weren't members of the local police force. The impact of this sentence is that it changes the minds of those who hear it. It makes you rethink every decision made in court, every testimony accepted without question. What seemed like just another brutal case begins to reveal invisible layers, a hidden truth that, perhaps, was never intended for the public. It's in these cracks that danger lies. Because when a detail like this is buried, it's not just justice that dies. It's history that becomes distorted, it's the silent transformation of a crime into legend. And it's precisely at this point that I need you to understand something. What follows this question is the kind of revelation you won't find in archives or old news stories. Stay with me until the end. Because only then will you realize that this story, even though officially closed, was never truly closed. There are details that were hidden not by accident, but out of fear of the effect they would have. And believe me, some of these details have already been shared with me, but not all at once. There was a photograph, forgotten in a locked drawer, showing 3 people side by side. One of them, still a child, holds something wrapped in a dark cloth. The prosecutor is in this photo. In the background, a wall with inscriptions almost erased by time. Forensic image analysis experts pointed out that one of the inscriptions corresponded to the name of a neighborhood that, officially, didn't exist at the time the photo was taken. This contradiction alone should have reopened the case. But it wasn't. And it is precisely in this silence that the true threat lies. It's not just about the crime. It's about the decisions made to ensure certain truths remain buried. It's about the impact a single question can have, not because of the answer but because of what it forces us to face. Behind the scenes, there's always someone deciding what deserves to be told. And when I realized this, I understood that the first body wasn't just a secret. It was a starting point for something much bigger. Some files vaguely describe the existence of a missing key witness. A man who was reportedly last seen on the same street where the first body was found. There's no official interrogation record, file, or address. Just a loose note, not reliable. Do not pursue. This is almost an invitation to keep digging. Because where there's a gap like that, there's also the chance to find what no one wants to expose. The most disturbing thing is that, for years, no one asked why this omission occurred. Until a former court employee, in a fit of sincerity, revealed that there were entire boxes of documents related to the case, and that one day they simply disappeared. She never found out where they were taken. But she remembers perfectly that, inside one of the folders, there was a child's drawing of a faceless body, made with quick strokes in red ink. This kind of trail doesn't disappear by accident. It disappears by decision. And every such decision comes at a price, even if no one signs the receipt. When you observe the pattern, you realize that the most disturbing stories aren't those with explicit scenes or bloody endings. They're the ones that leave gaps. The ones that force you to piece together a puzzle with pieces that never fit together. And perhaps that's why that last question still resonates. No matter how many years pass, it continues to open doors. Some to answers, others to abysses. And if I've learned anything, it's that there's nothing more dangerous than an abyss trying to pass itself off as solid ground. She spoke without crying, without trembling, like someone recounting something that has been repeated so many times in their mind that there's no longer room for emotion. The room grew chilly, not from the air conditioning but from the change in atmosphere. The judge leaned forward, trying to catch every word. And she, staring at a fixed point on the wall, uttered a sentence that didn't appear in any report. It wasn't the first, nor the last. The impact was immediate. The pen stopped. The murmurs ceased. Behind the scenes, the prosecutor's office exchanged brief glances, as if they already knew something, and preferred it not to come to light. Still, the authorities sent a team to verify the story. The address she described, street by street, led to a vacant lot, now covered in tall weeds and concrete debris. There, buried under rubble, they found a partially preserved piece of children's clothing. Details confirmed, but no record of who might have worn that garment. No names. No disappearances reported in that neighborhood at the time. Only silence. The strangest thing is that, days before this confession, a retired detective had already warned that the case had too many loose ends. He mentioned a sudden change in the witnesses' attitudes, as if they had all received the same instruction: forget. What few realized is that this girl, just 14 years old, wasn't just revealing a crime. She was touching on a collective wound, a hidden truth that threatened to expose decisions made long before she was born. And here comes something I often observe in these stories: it's not the crime itself that's most frightening, but what it forces us to see. A confession like this doesn't just reopen wounds, it rearranges the entire picture. It forces each person involved to rethink their role, their choices, their alliances. This is where the mindset of those investigating needs to change. Because if you believe you're dealing with an isolated case, you're missing half the truth. What intrigues me most is that this new line of investigation lasted only 2 weeks before being temporarily suspended. Documents were stamped non-priority. And suddenly the story disappeared from the media. No one questioned why a teenager would have such precise details of a murder that officially never happened. The official explanation, that she probably heard rumors, is a poorly constructed smokescreen. A former forensic expert who asked to remain anonymous revealed that the fabric found on the site underwent fiber analysis. The result: a match to a specific batch produced in a factory that closed in the late 1980s. This, in itself, is a dangerous revelation, because it places the date of the crime at least 10 years before the girl's birth. And then the question arises: how could she know so much? Some believe the answer lies within her own family. Insider stories point to a distant relative involved in shady dealings and with connections to influential figures of the time. This connection has never been officially confirmed, but it appears as a specter in cross-examinations. And if there's one thing I've learned from analyzing these cases, it's that time doesn't erase crimes like this. It only distorts them. Memories become distorted, names are lost, versions change. But certain marks endure. A scar on the street where it happened. A date scrawled at the bottom of a school notebook. A look that avoids certain conversations. This confession not only uncovered another crime, it revealed the fragility of the entire official narrative. It showed that behind every sentence lies a corridor of closed doors. And sometimes, those who hold the keys have no interest in opening them. Perhaps out of fear of what will come out. Perhaps because, deep down, the full story is more dangerous than the culprit himself. And this is the part that grips me most. Realizing that even when a lead emerges, the system seems prepared to suppress it. It's not a coincidence. It's a choice. It's a strategy. And when we understand this, we begin to see that some cases were never about justice. They were about control. About who decides what deserves to be told, and what needs to be buried forever. The chaplain, a figure who usually brings calm in the final moments, this time was broken before he even began. The young man, with a firm voice and eyes that carried an impossible-to-ignore shadow, uttered a sentence that froze the room: "Don't mention her name here." The murmur that followed came not from the voices, but from the weight of what was left unsaid. Who was she? What secret so profound could generate so much fear, even in that moment when all should be peaceful? Behind the scenes, the silence became almost palpable. The chaplain, who until then had been seen as someone of unshakable faith, requested a transfer within a few weeks. He cited personal reasons, but within the prison walls, the truth was different. He carried a burden he could not share. He never spoke publicly about the case again, and his presence became an absence that spoke louder than any words. This resistance to naming something reveals one of the greatest transformations these cases provoke: the fear of silence itself. It's the weight of a hidden truth, which weighs not only on the convicted person but also on those around them. It's a mindset that spans generations, creating invisible walls that block revelations, even when the world cries out for answers. The insistence on not mentioning that name became a kind of tacit pact between those involved. Curiosity grew outside the cells, fueled by rumors, empty testimonies, and the emptiness that every omission creates. In an environment where every word is measured, her absence sounded like a muffled scream. And like any forbidden secret, it aroused not only interest but also an uncomfortable feeling that something much larger was being hidden. Inside the cell, the young man seemed to undergo a profound transformation. He wasn't just a condemned man awaiting his fate, but someone who, with a few words, already controlled what could and couldn't be said. This decision, silent, powerful, shaped the entire environment, alienating allies and confusing enemies. It was an absolute control of the narrative that, even invisible, left indelible marks. Decisions like these aren't simple. They weigh like chains but also like shields. Protecting a name, hiding a story, preserving a secret. Each choice defines not only the future of that moment, but also influences the impact the case will have on collective memory. Omission, paradoxically, is one of the sharpest weapons when it comes to controlling the truth. Behind the scenes, reports point to a coordinated effort to keep that name out of the headlines, out of public conversations, and even out of internal investigations. A power play where silence is the currency and selective oblivion is the cruelest tactic. The young man knew this. Therefore, his warning wasn't just a request. It was a sentence for anyone who dared break the pact. And here lies one of the great revelations. Often what lies behind a forbidden name is the key to understanding the full extent of the crime. Not just the act itself, but the connections, the reasons, the behind-the-scenes details that transform a common case into an enigma that defies logic. The name that cannot be pronounced carries with it an emotional charge that no one can measure, but that everyone feels. This prohibition is more than a matter of respect or fear. It's a defense mechanism. A fine line between what is revealed and what must remain buried. The pressure on those trying to uncover the truth is immense, and it often leads to unexpected consequences, like the chaplain's silence, which in a way has become a symbol of this internal conflict between what must be said and what must remain hidden. It's at this point that the story's impact goes beyond words. What you're seeing isn't just a crime report or a sequence of events. It's a dive into a mindset where the power of the unsaid is as real as any sentence. Where decisions made in dark hallways determine what the audience will see, or never see. And that's precisely why I ask you, stay with me until the end. Because what follows will reveal how this shadow spread, reaching unexpected places, and why this forbidden name still whispers in the silence of cells and forgotten archives. Only then will this story truly gain the dimension it deserves, and you will understand how the control of the invisible shapes the truth we know. If you feel this story stirs something within you, know that we don't stop there. Each mystery we unravel is a step toward what few dare face, the raw, naked, and hidden truth. So, if you haven't yet joined this journey, sign up. Not as an obligation, but as a silent pact between those who seek answers and those who deliver these stories with respect and intensity. Your presence here is the fuel that keeps these doors open, allowing me to continue revealing the hidden depths and darker layers the world tries to hide. With each submission, it's as if you're saying, I want to know more. I want to go further. And it's precisely for those willing to face these shadows that I've prepared what comes next. Revelations that will blow your mind and challenge what you think you know. Some of these children passed away without ever revealing their motives. They died carrying secrets that became eternal echoes, reverberating in the memories of those who tried to understand. Others, however, left fragments, clues so subtle they seem more like enigmas than explanations. A gaze frozen in time, a torn letter, a silence that weighs more than any spoken word. Each of these marks carries immense weight, a hidden truth that defies all logic and invades the minds of those who dare to delve deeper into these stories. It's this shadow that refuses to lift. A weight that turns every detail into a puzzle where the pieces never quite fit together. Do you feel it? The uneasiness that arises when a simple sentence becomes a maze of doubts, when a decision made by a child reveals a mindset so complex that no adult could understand it without getting lost along the way. And here, in the silence between the words, lies true transformation, not just of the stories but of those who hear them. Because when you connect with these truncated lives, you begin to realize that the impact goes beyond the crime. It's about what these choices say about human nature, about the decisions that change destinies, and about the fine line between innocence and darkness. So I ask you, which of these stories stuck in your mind? Which whispered phrase before the final silence dragged you into this abyss? Which look, which silence, which gesture was most disturbing to you? I want you to write this in the comments. It can be a word, a phrase, anything that represents what you felt when hearing these confessions and revelations. This gesture is not just a way to share your impressions. It's a step toward building together a space where these silenced voices can, in some way, be heard again. I know it's not easy. Many prefer to leave these stories forgotten, buried along with the bodies and the secrets. But what happens when we remember? What happens when we insist on reliving these shadows? Perhaps it is precisely there, in this confrontation with what has been hidden, that we can find something that transcends fear, a chance for transformation, a new look at the hidden truth. It's an invitation to you who are here now to be part of this search, because each comment is more than a typed word. It's a light shining in the dark hallway, a resistance against the oblivion that tries to dominate. And so, as these stories continue to echo between cold walls and restless minds, the journey continues. Not because we have all the answers, but because the mystery, the silence, and the impact these children left still insist on relenting. What they said before the execution may be just the beginning of a much larger truth, a truth we will only reveal together. If you've made it this far, it's because this story did more than capture your attention. It stirred something within you. This isn't by chance. It's the weight of incomplete truth, of justice that never arrives, and of mysteries that insist on resisting oblivion. If you'd like, leave the phrase, "I'm with you until the end" in the comments. It's a simple gesture, but it carries all the power of someone who understands that these voices, even silent ones, deserve to be heard. If this journey has touched you, a like is a silent signal that we're in this together. A pact against silence, a light against the darkness that insists on remaining. And there's much more. A video right there delves even deeper into these dark plots, bringing revelations you won't want to miss. Click through and continue this journey with me. Because knowing is resisting, and resisting is staying alive within history.